Today I'm going to discuss the four evil M's: masking, misattribution, manipulation, and mismanagement. These are the four evil M's. These things happen to people who are on the autistic spectrum but don't know that they're on the autistic spectrum, but don't fully understand it or haven't fully looked into that part of their experience. They might know, but they just don't fully understand it. Um, and thirdly, may happen to people who haven't unmasked their autism just yet. Or fourthly, may happen to young autistic people in general, since young people are less experienced. So let me go through each of those one by one. Masking. You see, autistic people are pressured to mask from a rather young age in ways we might not ordinarily expect. We might not expect autistic people to be pressured to mask at a very young age directly, or rather, sorry, we may not expect autistic people to mask at a young age simply from existing within society, i.e., indirectly. Yes, autistic children receive a lot more corrective comments about their behavior than their neurotypical peers do. Same goes for ADHD and otherwise neurodivergent children. Because of this, because of the real or perceived or combination of both hostility to neurodivergence, as well as the fact that many kids do not understand neurodivergence and do not have the self-confidence uh, to uh, to be proud of their neurodivergence or their identity in general, and kids generally have a hard time expressing themselves. This leads to masking, even in children as young as 7 or 8. And this masking, if left untreated, if left on anything, can persist throughout the lifespan, regardless of whether the person receives an autism diagnosis later on in life, or early in life for that matter, or not. So, masking is associated with a very long list of negative mental and, by extension, negative physical effects. Very poor mental health, very poor physical health, excessive burnout, feelings of low self esteem, humiliation, inferiority. In extreme cases, masking autism amounts to addiction to drugs and alcohol, or even death by suicide in the worst cases. I mean, that's probably the reason why the suicide rate in the autistic population is so much higher than it is in the non autistic population. Second point, what was I saying? Misattribution. Misattribution, okay? When a person misattributes their autistic traits to character flaws or to other aspects of their identity, while misattributing one part of your identity to other part of your identity is not a bad thing in and of itself, it can lead you to incorrect conclusions. It can lead you to incorrect understandings of yourself, which can lead you to take incorrect courses of action. As for the misattributing autistic traits to character flaws, well, then that's a serious problem. You know, people think that they're lazy, or they're a jerk, or maybe they're just a bad friend, or a bad partner, or a bad spouse, or a bad parent, or a bad child, or a bad whatever. So many autistic people, prior to the coming to that realization that no, these traits of mine are not bad, they're not character flaws, they're simply traits of autism. There's so many countless stories like that. I'm one of so many people who had that experience. I'm just one. And that is misattribution. People will sometimes misattribute their autistic traits. They will sometimes think, oh, I'm just doomed to live like this. I'm just doomed to be inferior to everybody. Or, I'm just awkward. Or I'm just a jerk in social circles. Or I'm just a naturally rude person. Or I'm just a naturally bad individual. No, I'm serious. Such are the thoughts that race through the autistic mind. when that autistic mind does not fully understand its reality, its own reality. Third point I would add onto that thing, that whole the four evil M's, is mismanagement. Mismanagement. That's different from masking, that's different from misattribution. Mismanagement. You see, there's all sorts of self-help books, management tips, people give advice to each other on how to do this and how to do that. But autistic brains are autistic brains. Autistic brains work in a certain way that, while all autistic brains are different from each other, there are certain commonalities that all autistic people share and that non-autistic people do not share. You see, many life skills and life management techniques are based on neurotypical brains. When an autistic person tries to adopt those life skills and life management techniques, in many cases it doesn't work. It's like trying to it's like trying to drive a sedan on a dirt road, or it's like trying to run a Mac application on a PC in certain circumstances. It doesn't work. I mean, obviously there is some overlap, but there's also a significant amount of difference. Mismanagement. Autistic people who don't understand they're autistic, or who don't fully understand what autism means, even if they know they're on the autistic spectrum, they don't know how to manage themselves. They don't know how to take care of their lives and be the best version of themselves and have the life skills that are necessary for being autistic and successful as autistic people. So they mismanage their lives significantly. And this mismanagement can be related to masking. Uh, it can be related to misattribution. And those things can exacerbate mismanagement. Also, the fourth evil M is manipulation. Autistic people are generally more naive and struggle with social skills more so than their neurotypical counterparts do. And this is fairly well known to anyone who knows anything about autism or to anyone who's on the autistic spectrum. Socializing is not very easy for many people on the autistic spectrum. And many people who are on the autistic spectrum take people as friends who are more powerful than them. And those more powerful people will sometimes manipulate them and abuse them. And this manipulator could be an older person, it could be an adult, it could be any number of people. They'll take advantage of the fact that the autistic person is different, the autistic person is sensitive, and the autistic person is naive. They will take advantage of these things. And in many cases, sometimes the autistic person, it gets bad enough, the autistic person will self-manipulate. The autistic person will be aware at some subconscious level that they are in fact different and sensitive and naive. And if they hang out with, you know, the tough guys who got it together and got it made, that if they hang out with people like that, that sort of crowd, the people that they subconsciously perceive as superior to them, that those are that they will lose their things about them, they will lose their traits that make them different or sensitive. And this is what subconsciously, I believe, goes through a lot of autistic people's minds. So that was a lot. There's a lot of really bad things happening to autistic people: masking, mismanagement, misattribution, and manipulation. How are these interconnected with each other? Masking one's autism can lead one to pursue people who cause an autistic person to be manipulated, who manipulate an autistic person, right? And misattribution can cause an autistic person to mask. Mismanagement can cause stress and anxiety, which can contribute to that negative cycle of misattribution and not standing up for oneself and not unmasking and other things like that. And manipulation can cause a person to increase in their mask and increase in their misattribution. So these are all very bad, but they're all very interconnected. And what is a solution that I propose to these problems? Well, I would say that prioritize unmasking. Prioritize unmasking. No, I'm not saying make autism your new hyperfixation. That's not what I said. What I did say is that if you have an autistic brain, you have to make sure that you can stand up for yourself using that autistic brain, i.e., you can unmask your autism and stand up for yourself, right? You have to have that ability. If you are on the autistic spectrum, parents, it is your imperative responsibility to teach your autistic kids, to teach your autistic youth and teenagers how to stand up for themselves and how to unmask their autism. You know, parents say all the time, good parents will say, a good parent will say, and they'll genuinely mean it, they'll tell their kid, you can talk to me about anything. Parents, it is your imperative responsibility to make sure that your kid, your autistic kid, regardless of their age, can be unmasked around you. Also, it's very important, you know, as autistic teenagers are finding their identity, finding their place in the world, finding their this and their that, finding what works for them, trying new things, youthful experimentation, and all of that. It's imperative for autistic teens and autistic young adults to find the life strategies and life skills that work for them. Not, oh, I'm gonna do it just because, you know, that's how it's done or that's how everyone else does it. No, find what works for you and do that. Okay? As for the manipulation part, generally I would say that falls into the category of unmasking. It's always better for a person to know that they are on the autistic spectrum and to know that um and to understand what that means, maybe not at a hyperfixation level, but at least how does it apply to them, how does it affect them in their life. It's always a good thing to understand that. And also just, you know, be aware of signs of manipulation. It's always important because for us autistics, we don't intuitively have that skill set. We don't intuitively have the skill set to be able to understand this person is a nice person, this person is manipulating or exploiting me, or this person is a wolf in sheep's costume, as they say. I've had to learn the hard way because having being autistic means that I don't have that intuitive innate ability to understand, is this person really a bad person disguising themselves as good. I don't have the intuitive ability to understand most forms of body language or facial expression or more subtle forms of tone of voice, the less obvious facial expressions, the less obvious tone of voice, the less obvious body language, because I don't even demonstrate myself in that way. I don't even carry myself like that. Much less am I able to understand the more subtle forms of nonverbal communication that neurotypical and non-autistic people use. Um, as for the misattribution, you know, always understand autism. You know, always try your best to understand autism. If you're autistic, it's your responsibility to understand autism. It's your responsibility to understand your brain and how it affects you in your life. And it's also your responsibility to not ever at any point in your life, under any circumstance, think that autistic equals bad. Obviously, most people would say, well, no, autistic doesn't equal bad. Autistic is a type of brain. But do you think bad whenever you think of your autistic traits? Do you think bad of your autistic traits? And it brings something to mind that I have been thinking about interesting a lot, and it's very interesting to me. And it's called neuronormativity. Yeah, that big old word, neuronormativity. And there's many aspects of it, but it's basically privileging of neurotypical brains over every other type of brain in society, and the expectations and the norms and the processes and the laws and the other things that society is made out of based on how neurotypical brains work. This disables people who are not neurotypical because they have a harder time navigating society, because the society is set up with the assumption that people are by default neurotypical. And that's bad because it harms autistic people and it harms neurodivergent people. What are manifestations of this? Neuronormativity makes autistic people mask because autistic behaviors are not normative. Autistic behaviors deviate in many cases from social norms and are thus considered to be bad behaviors in many cases. Add to that the fact that autism is pathologized, and when people think of autism, they think of disease or disorder. And that makes life harder for autistic people. You take the fact that autistic behaviors are already not normative and already not socially expected, add that onto the fact that autism is pathologized as a disease or disorder in clinical manuals and in many autism treatments, and there the results explain themselves. Misattribution. When certain character traits and certain ways of thinking and certain ways of being are prioritized not just as the norm, but prioritized as the right way to do it, as the right way, then everything else becomes the wrong way. If you prioritize the way that a neurotypical person thinks and acts and speaks as the right way to do it, then you make it's just this right wrong binary. That's what society has created, and that is what autistic people suffer from with the whole misattribution thing. Mismanagement, I mean, generally, it's not like we need societal change or it's not neuronormativity that causes mismanagement. It's just like more so people need to learn tools. As for the manipulation part, I think it's that people with bad intentions will exploit those who they perceive as weak. And living in a society where neurotypical people have more privilege than neurodivergent people are weaker. Not intrinsically. I did not say intrinsically, but in society, neurodivergent people are weaker and have less power and less agency and less control over their own lives and over the society in which we live in. So we must smash this whole neuronormativity. You know, you hear like, oh, all these feminist people saying, oh, smash the patriarchy. Um, you have like black people and whatever saying end racism. What's up with we autistic people that we're not saying end neuronormativity? Why aren't we saying that? That's what we all need to be saying, in addition to improving our own lives, unmasking our autism, and coming to a more full and complete understanding of autism, as well as finding healthy people to socialize with. Thanks for watching.